Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to Growing Through It, a podcast dedicated to bringing you clarity so that you can harness your curiosity and be the creator of your life. Hosted by me, Shanae Rowe. Hello. Thank you for being here. Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for listening along. I hope you're having a splendid time wherever you are, whatever you're up to. I really hope that you are enjoying life. But yeah, welcome back to the potty. This is episode 15, and I am going to be talking about gifting ourselves permission to grieve who we once were as we enter the new seasons of life, and then also how we can find beauty in the rubble of these times. You know, it can be really challenging. Moving through the world and becoming new versions of ourselves. And that also means like we have to let go of parts of ourselves that maybe we like. And so, like, how do we find joy and how do we find, moments of beauty in those really challenging times? First off, I want to talk about the journey of life. I'm sure we're all aware that, we are ever changing. Life is always changing. We have the seasons, we have, different phases of our lives and chapters that we go through, and we're always entering these new chapters and these new seasons. And I really want to touch on how new seasons, they ask for a new version of ourselves, right? If we're going through, if we've just started a new chapter, a lot of the times what is being called forth in that new chapter is a different way for us to think, a different way for us to act and to be and to live our lives. And, the more sort of seasons and things that we go through, the more we're adapting, the more that we're learning, and the more that we're growing. So life is all about changing. Life is about change. And I think change means loss and losing something in some way, whether we're losing like part of who we are, who we once were, whether it's, losing friends and friendships and relationships and family. It can be all sorts of things. But I think, to change means to lose something that we once had or that we do have in this moment. Right. And so if we put this in the perspective of like, of ourselves emotionally and internally, we can't become someone new without letting go of something currently within ourselves, right? Like we can't enter a new season of life. We can't, enter a new chapter of our existence with our current version of self. We are, we need to enter these new chapters with a new perspective and a new way of, thinking and being. And that means letting go of something that we currently have, letting go of a part of ourselves that we currently are. So that's really what I want to talk about today. And yeah, sort of what that looks like, how it feels within us, what sort of comes up when we are changing and growing and having to let go of parts of ourselves in order to really exist to our fullest capacity in these new seasons of life. And I have experienced that when we do enter a new chapter and a new season, and if it is a very conscious choice to start something fresh, whether that is to, move across the country and start a new job, or whether that is to, travel to a place that you've never been to before, whatever it is, whatever this new season of life is asking for us, and if we make that choice into that new chapter consciously, it's not like just an accident that's happened. It's we're putting in the effort to start something new, to do something different. Then I find what tends to happen is a lot of things happen, and I think one of them is, resistance, letting go of part of our identity and sort of the grief that follows and comes up for that. And I experienced this really intensely in the last like few months. I've been integrating into a new like a new sort of lifestyle at the moment, new job, new place to live. And like, as you guys know, if you've been listening to the podcast, or, if you know me, I have been traveling. I've been solo traveling, for the last however many months, I don't even know, but I have been in this period of life where I've been exploring and I haven't really settled down anywhere. And I've just been, in new places and meeting new people and doing all these new things really, in such a short space of time. And in the last couple months, I have settled down on the beautiful Sunshine Coast. And it has been a really crazy transitional period for me because part of me still really wanted to travel and still really wanted to, keep exploring and keep being this really like naive and spontaneous and crazy quirky woman, but at the same time my heart and my body needed rest, and I really wanted a period of time where I could just settle into a routine, just have a stable sort of place to stay and live and be for a little while. Um, and the hardest thing that I faced was letting go of who I was when I was traveling and really like being in the present moment and accepting myself for who I am right now, because I have noticed within myself that I'm very different, like just emotionally, behaviorally, just how I show up in the world is very different now than how it was when I was traveling. And it's been really hard to come to terms with because I freaking loved that version of myself. I really loved being like spontaneous and naive and just traveling and doing like fun things and not having a care in the world, right? I was like super outgoing and charismatic and loud, and I wanted to take up space and I wanted to be seen, and I was just like really being like brave and confident, and I still love that part of myself. And it was really hard to come to terms with the fact that I'm not so much like that anymore. And I think that's where sort of grief comes into things, when we have created a version of ourselves that we love so intensely, that we sort of are having trouble letting go and embracing this new self and this new persona we've that we're currently in, you know? And yeah, like, so for me, obviously, like, this grief of an old self to a new self was because of, um, you know, f- I went from traveling, van life travel, to settling into a home. And yeah, there are so many examples of sort of when this can happen, of, the times that we are called forth to, um, adapt and, step up and become a new sort of person in order to fulfill the needs of this new chapter of our lives, right? It could be, going from traveling to settling down, or it could go the opposite way of, having a stable, job and workplace, and then going to like travel, spontaneous lifestyle. And yeah, there are so many, I feel like big shifts in our physical worlds tend to bring about really big shifts in our behaviors and our emotions and our beliefs, because we're really being asked to show up in a different way, to behave in a different way, to think in a different way. But yeah, whatever it is that you're experiencing, where you can feel that you are changing your ways, um you are morphing into this different being almost. And it can be a really hard like adjustment period and transition when you really freaking loved who you were. Like previously, like we spend so much time with ourselves, and I think for the most of us, we really try to be the best versions of ourselves. We try and find our blind spots and the things that we struggle with and work on it and show up for ourselves and, keep building on the skills that we have. And so I found that when we do get to a point where we have like created this beautiful, inspiring version of ourselves, for whatever reason, it can be really incredibly difficult to let go of that version of ourselves when the world is sort of asking us to change and to step into sort of a new identity and version of who we are. We get a lot of resistance, right? We want to hold on to who we were and who we sort of still are because we feel like we are so important. And we are important. Like what we have created purely by ourselves and because of the people that have influenced our lives and our decision making, like that version has been created by you, and it's so powerful and it is so brave. And when you love that version of yourself, it's really, I found it's really difficult to let them go. And like there's a lot of resistance, but when we can get through that resistance, what is there is grief. And I found that grief is an essential and sacred part of our journey through life and our healing journey and our personal stories. And I think if we don't take the time to let ourselves grieve over losing who we once were, we spend so much of our time running from a new version of who we need to be in the hopes of hanging on to what we no longer have and who we no longer are. Right? It's almost as if we're rejecting change. We are looking, change in the eye, where we're looking our future self in the eye and we're saying, like, nope, I don't want that, because I'm so attached to who I was and who I'm still trying to hang on to. I'm so attached to that version of myself that I'm rejecting any possibility of changing. I'm rejecting any possibility of becoming a new version of myself, and with all these different beliefs and ideas and things, because I love that past version so much. Right? It's that I feel like between, like before we're able to really grieve who we once were, we're in this really tricky in between phase where we're not quite that new version of ourselves yet, but we're definitely not our old self. And we're stuck sort of transfixed in that middle ground of really uncomfortable sensations of like being half in and half out. And I think that's where a lot of people can get stuck. And I know for sure, like, that is where I get stuck, in that in between stage. And I think that, we get stuck there because we're still trying to hold on to who we were, right? And we haven't fully accepted that we are no longer them and we can't be them anymore, because this new phase of our life, this, our new environment is asking us to be someone different. Right? We have to, like, we don't want to fully commit to being a new version of ourselves yet, because we are so, still admiring who we are, who we still wish to be. But the reality is that we can't stay the same, right? Change is inevitable. Life is about changing. And like I said at the start, change means loss. And sometimes that loss is part of ourselves, part of our identity, but it doesn't always have to be like a scary or a bad thing, right? I think sometimes like the refusal to let go of parts of ourselves creates our suffering, right? When we're hanging in between the new self and our old self, and we're refusing to let go of the old self, that creates our suffering, right? And maybe that's why it's so sad to be in that middle ground, because it's almost as if we're rejecting our future self. We're saying, like, no, I don't want to be you, because I still want to be who I was and who I still am hanging on to, right? And, like, sometimes time is a funny thing. And sometimes I think that we're our past, present, and future all at once. And so, yeah, sometimes I think that maybe sometimes our current selves get so sad because it's making our future self sad. I don't know, that's just a little weird thing I like to ponder on sometimes. And if it makes sense, it makes sense. And hopefully, hopefully it does to some people. Anyways, yeah, so refusing to let go, right? That creates our suffering. We want to be somewhere that we no longer are instead of embracing the now and where our feet are, right? The universe is asking us to change and we have to comply, right? Or else we'll be forever chasing the ghost of ourselves. And that's sort of the reality of it, right? Um, if we don't step into a new version of ourselves, if we are still refusing to let go of that past version of who we are, we're just we're chasing the ghost of ourselves, and we're holding on to something that no longer serves us anymore, and we're not being able to make the most of the situation that we're currently in because we're refusing to be who we need to be in that moment. So I guess like the question is why? Why do we hang on? Why do we refuse to let go? Why do we stay in this place that creates suffering and pain and discomfort? And it has to be surely like the fear of loss, the fear of losing something that we have, um, the loss of an identity. We place so much importance on who we are, and maybe our ego gets involved, and we like how we look to the outside world. We like how we feel internally. We have put in so much hard work to be who we are in this moment, right? Bringing it back to, creating yourself, right? We put in so much hard work. We love how our life looks and feels. And we sort of love how others perceive us because of the life that we're living. And if we were to change that, that leads to a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainty. Everything is up in the air again, and you sort of have to start over from scratch. And that's really hard to face. The whole idea that we don't know who we are again. We're starting over. We're put in new situations and we need to come up with new ways to adapt and to handle those situations and to still behave in ways that feel true to us while confronted with challenging experiences. And maybe we resist changing, we resist becoming that new version because, change is uncomfortable. It's always uncomfortable when put in new situations. And I think maybe a part of it too is like committing is hard. Committing in any sense, whether that is to a new job or to putting your name on a contract, whether that's a lease or a house or, a job contract, right? Like committing to something means committing to a new lifestyle, which means committing to the change that we must go through in order to live that lifestyle, that new way of life. And I think that in itself, like committing, means actively making that choice to let go of part of our identity and to move into something that's challenging and that's going to be uncomfortable. And it's that awareness that it's hard, but you have to ask yourself, like, is it worth it? Is it going to be worth it? Is this change what I am looking for? Is this committing to this new task going to bring about a change in my character that I am comfortable with? Not comfortable, but change in my character that I'm going to be proud of when I've gone through this new season of life? Am I going to be proud of the person that I become and the qualities that I gain and all the such? Am I going to be proud of that version of myself if I commit to this job or this contract or this new lifestyle. And I think that is why, sometimes we can get stuck in that unwillingness to change who we are, unwillingness to accept that new version of ourselves fully. But yeah, I think when we give ourselves the permission to embrace this new self, right? When we step into, like, fully, when we let go of our old self, right? And we make that commitment, we make that choice to step into who we are being asked to be in this moment, we give ourselves the permission to grieve that old self. And what is grief? And it's the loss of something, right? It's losing something that we feel is important to us, that we've built a bond with or an affection towards, and that strong bond has been formed. And I think when we have let go of that version of ourselves, right, we give ourselves permission to get upset about losing that part of us, right? Giving ourselves permission to grieve means giving ourselves permission to, be upset by losing something that was important to us. And how can you not be upset over losing a part of yourself that you no longer are? It might be crazy to compare it to death, but if we have spent so much of our time creating a version of ourselves and loving that version of ourselves, how is it at all strange to be sad about losing that? You know, how how can we not get upset about letting that part of us go when we have spent all that time and we have connected with ourselves so intensely and poured all of this effort and affection and love into ourselves? How can we not get upset when that gets taken away from us, when we realize that we're no longer that person, right? So of course, like, it is so normal to grieve who we once were. And I think when you love and honor that past self for who it was, and you can accept that you are no longer that person anymore, then you can start to recognize a lot of things from that past chapter with a fresh perspective. When we fully let go, when we fully step into this new persona, when we fully come home to a new version of ourselves and let go of who we were, then we have this ability to look at ourselves, right, from an outside perspective, from an outside view, and we can look in on, a chunk of our lives without clouded judgment and without our personal preferences getting in the way of decision making and things like that. We can actually step back and have a look at, that chapter of our lives, who we were in it, what we loved and admired about it, what we maybe so much didn't like about ourselves in that chapter, and what we can do to change it. I think we gain so much self-awareness when we are able to part ways with who we were, right? Whether that was, a fun, easygoing, confident, naive person. Like, there are so many things that you can love about that chapter of yourself and who you were during that chapter. And there are so many things that you can look back on and be like, oh, hey, I didn't really like that about myself. Moving forward, I would so love to work on that more, right? You gain so much clarity about who you are and what you like and what you need from this world when you can look at an old version of yourself with the freshness and the clarity of a new version of yourself who isn't in it, if that makes sense. It's hard to see our blind spots and the things we're struggling with and whatnot when we're immersed in that experience. But yeah, another thing that I just wanted to add, like, it's not all misery, grieving ourselves and giving ourselves permission to mourn over who we are. It's not all sad, right? There is a lot of beauty amongst all the rubble of it. And I think that when we are fully able to let go and to step into a new season and a new version of ourselves, we are able to recognize that everything that we are right now, right, in this new chapter and season, in this new fiery essence of who we are, everything, like all our little characteristics and the ways that we speak and the ways that we think are because of all the work that we put in during that last chapter, during that last season. Like, I really had a beautiful moment where I was struggling so much with really still wanting to be, my free spirited traveling self and all the qualities that came with that version of me. But once I finally let go of that and met myself and saw myself in this new chapter of, being a little more slow and a little more thoughtful and, a little bit more calm in this new season of my life, I was able to look at myself now and be like, hey, all these things, all these qualities that I'm noticing about myself, they're qualities that I have built through this last season. They're qualities that when I was being like naive and traveling, and that is what I was working on becoming. Those qualities are what I was trying to develop within myself, to be more thoughtful and to be kinder and more generous. I really wanted to become more of those things when I was in my free spirited traveling phase, right? And that's the beauty of stepping into a new self. You get to give yourself the credit for all the hard work that you put in during that last little season. It doesn't even have to be like qualities and characteristics. It can be material things as well. Like if your last season was all about like hustling and saving money, and now you're out traveling the world, like once you've fully accepted that that is now your new season of life, then you're able to look back and be like, thank you. Thank you to my old self for putting in all the work so that I can be here now where my feet are in this new season of my life, spending all the money that I have saved while I was out hustling. And I think that it's really beautiful when we're able to recognize that even though we're no longer who we were, and even though, who we were is someone that we really loved and admired, it's not a lost cause, right? Because we got to the place that we really wanted to be. We got to the place emotionally, mentally, physically of where we had been aiming to go, which is really spectacular. And it's a moment to just reflect and have gratitude and love for ourselves, past, present, and future. I think sometimes I struggle with, like, I don't want to become someone new. Like, I'm resisting changing who I am so much, and I'm resisting stepping into a new season because I feel like if I let go of who I am and if I let go of who I'm hanging on to, then what's going to happen? Will I be lost? Will everything that I've done be a lost cause and be a waste? And I think definitely not. That version of myself and that version of you that you're clinging onto for dear life, if you let go, it's not going to be lost and it's not going to be for nothing. All that hard work and effort you put into creating yourself isn't for nothing, right? Even though that it's not who you are right now, it's not who you are anymore, it's still a version of you who existed, and you wouldn't be where you are now without that version. right? And now that part of you and that season of your life and who you were in that season gets to be memories. And those memories get to be stories that you tell, right? They're stories that you can tell to your friends 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. They're stories that you can tell to strangers on the street or give advice to. Or, they're stories that you're able to find lessons in and share those lessons as valuable pieces of, truth to other people who need to hear it. And I think that's really powerful and that's really beautiful. And it wouldn't you wouldn't have those stories and those memories if you didn't exist as you did fully and wholeheartedly in that previous period of your life, right? And if you weren't that last version of who you are, right? Like your old self, it's still part of you. It's still part of who you are. And it's not a waste just because you're no longer that version, right? It's not a waste at all. It's quite honestly like it's necessary, right? That version of you is necessary, and everything, every decision that you've made, every choice that has been yours to make in order to become and develop is part of your journey. It is part of the ever-changing nature of your existence and being here in this world, and it is spectacular and it is beautiful, and it will be forever a part of you and your story and your life, which I think is pretty extraordinary. But yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there. I have had such a joyous time recording this episode. Big, big thank you to my lovely listeners and friends for following along with this episode. I hope that it's been a good one. I hope you've found something valuable in it. Please share it around with the people that you care about so that they can find some valuable things in it as well. It would really mean the world to me. And as well, if you haven't given the potty a rating or anything, I would so appreciate if you did that. Big thank you. I'm sending lots of love and lots of hugs to you all. Yeah, love you. Have a wonderful week. The world is waiting for you, so get on out there and enjoy your big, beautiful life. Bye.